Southern Italy, around 495 BC. Night had fallen, and one of history's greatest minds was running for his life. His schools were burning. His followers were being hunted. The brotherhood he had spent decades building was collapsing around him. And now, an old man who had once advised kings and inspired thousands was powerless. But the strangest part of the story is that nobody knows how it ended. Some ancient writers say he burned alive. Others claim he starved himself to death. Some believed he was murdered while escaping. And others insisted that he survived, living out his final days in exile. 25 centuries later, we still don't know how Pythagoras died. But perhaps an even bigger mystery remains. How did a man obsessed with numbers build one of the most secretive brotherhoods in the ancient world? How did a philosopher become a political power? And why did his enemies hate him so much that they destroyed everything he had created? This is the rise and fall of Pythagoras, the man whose own writings vanished, whose brotherhood was destroyed, whose death remains a mystery. Yet after 2,500 years, every student on Earth still knows his name. Long before Pythagoras became a legend, the Greek world itself was changing. The 6th century BC was an age of sailors, traders, warriors, and gods. There was no Greece as we know it today. Instead, dozens of independent city-states competed for wealth and power. Across the Aegean Sea, Greek colonies stretched far beyond the mainland. And among them, the island of Samos had become one of the richest places in the Mediterranean. Under the ambitious ruler Polycrates, Samos flourished. Ships filled its harbors. Merchants brought ideas from Egypt, Phoenicia, and Babylon. But this was also a world full of mystery. People worshipped countless gods. Secret religious cults promised salvation. Oracles claimed to speak for the divine. And philosophers had only just begun asking a dangerous question. What if the universe followed laws instead of myths? In this changing world, on a small island in the eastern Aegean, a child was born. His name was Pythagoras, and he was about to begin a journey that would change mathematics forever. Around 570 BC, on the island of Samos, Pythagoras entered the world. Almost immediately, stories began to surround him. Later writers claimed he possessed extraordinary intelligence. Some even said he was destined for greatness. But separating fact from legend is not easy, because Pythagoras himself left behind no writings, and much of his life survives only through stories written centuries later. What we do know is that he grew up in a world connected by trade and ideas. And somewhere along the way, he became obsessed with knowledge. Ancient traditions claim he traveled to Egypt. There, he may have studied with priests, learning geometry and sacred traditions. Other accounts suggest that after the Persian conquest of Egypt, he was taken to Babylon, where he encountered advanced mathematics and astronomy. Some historians even point to influences from Phoenician culture. How much of this is true? Nobody knows. But one thing is certain. By the time he returned to the Greek world,
He was no longer just a man from Samos. He had become something else, a thinker, a teacher, and perhaps a visionary. Soon, he would leave his homeland forever, and in southern Italy, he would create something unlike anything the ancient world had ever seen. Leaving Samos behind, Pythagoras crossed the sea to southern Italy and eventually arrived in the prosperous city of Croton. At first, he was simply a teacher, but his ideas attracted followers, more followers, and then devotion. Soon, a brotherhood was born. But this was no ordinary school. Members lived according to strict rules. Some practiced vegetarianism. Many shared property. New members remained silent for years before being trusted with deeper teachings. Secrets were guarded carefully. Outsiders knew very little, and that only made the group more mysterious. To the Pythagoreans, numbers were not just tools. Numbers were the foundation of reality itself. Music, nature, the heavens. Everything followed hidden mathematical harmony. Their motto was simple: everything is number. And as the brotherhood grew, so did its influence. But secrecy, power, and influence would eventually create enemies. Enemies who would one day bring everything crashing down. By now, Pythagoras was no longer just another philosopher. In Croton, people whispered about the strange man who believed that numbers ruled the universe. To most Greeks, numbers were tools. But to Pythagoras, numbers were reality itself. He taught that behind every sound, every star, every shape, there was a hidden mathematical order. And nowhere was this more beautiful than in music. Legend says Pythagoras once heard blacksmiths hammering metal. Different hammers produced different sounds. Most men heard noise. Pythagoras heard mathematics. He discovered that musical harmony followed numerical ratios. For the first time, music and mathematics became one. Then came geometry, the relationship between the sides of a right triangle would become one of the most famous ideas in human history. Though historians still debate whether the theorem itself originated before him, it was the Pythagorean school that transformed it into a pillar of mathematics. But numbers, music, and geometry were only part of his vision. He believed the heavens themselves moved according to harmony. That the cosmos was not chaos, but order. That everything in existence could ultimately be understood through numbers. Everything is number. That was his philosophy. And perhaps for the first time in history, someone dared to suggest that the universe obeyed mathematical laws. A revolutionary idea that would echo for thousands of years. But while Pythagoras was changing mathematics, he was also becoming something far more dangerous. Not just a philosopher, not just a teacher, but a man whose influence was beginning to shape the politics of an entire city. And that would change everything. Croton had welcomed Pythagoras as a philosopher. But over the years,
he became far more than that. His brotherhood attracted nobles, military leaders, and some of the richest families in southern Italy. Joining was difficult. Members followed strict rules, shared property, lived disciplined lives, and guarded their teachings with secrecy. As the brotherhood grew, its influence spread beyond philosophy. Pythagorean disciples advised rulers, entered government, and gained influence throughout Croton. To supporters, they brought order and wisdom. But to others, they looked like an elite circle ruling from the shadows. Whispers began to spread. People questioned their secrecy, their privileges, their growing power. And soon, a dangerous question emerged. Who truly ruled Croton? The city itself, or the followers of Pythagoras? For decades, no one dared challenge them. But now, an enemy had appeared, and he was about to change everything.
His name was Cylon of Croton, rich, influential, and ambitious. Ancient accounts say he wanted to join the Pythagorean Brotherhood, but he was rejected. Some blamed his arrogance. Others claimed the Brotherhood simply refused him. Whatever happened, Cylon never forgot the insult. Soon, personal hatred became political war. He accused the Pythagoreans of arrogance, of elitism, of controlling the city through secret meetings. And many citizens listened. Years of secrecy and growing political influence had created enemies everywhere. People who once admired Pythagoras now began to fear him. The brotherhood that claimed to pursue wisdom was increasingly seen as a secret society above the law. And then, the anger finally exploded. Violence was coming.
And one of history's most mysterious brotherhoods was about to face its darkest hour. For years, the Brotherhood had stood above everyone else. Its members advised rulers, controlled politics, and believed that numbers held the secrets of the universe. But now, the city that once welcomed them had turned against them. Ancient traditions blame a man named Cylon. Others suggest years of growing resentment had finally exploded. Whatever the cause, violence came without warning. One night, angry crowds surrounded the meeting places of the Pythagoreans. Houses were attacked. Buildings were set on fire. Disciples who had spent decades studying mathematics and philosophy were suddenly fighting for their lives. Some were killed. Others escaped into exile. The brotherhood that had once seemed unbreakable collapsed into chaos. Schools were abandoned. Communities disappeared. And the dream Pythagoras had spent his entire life building began to burn before his eyes. For decades, they had tried to bring order to the world. But now, their own world was falling apart.
Croton no longer belonged to the Pythagoreans. Their influence vanished. Their power disappeared. And their enemies had won. But amid the smoke and destruction, one question remained. What happened to Pythagoras himself? Did the old philosopher escape? Or did he perish with the brotherhood he had created? Nobody knew. And that mystery would survive for thousands of years.
Even today, more than 25 centuries later, nobody knows how Pythagoras died. Ancient writers told different stories, and none of them agreed. One account claims that as his followers were being slaughtered, Pythagoras was trapped inside a burning building, and the man who spent his life searching for harmony died in the flames. Another tradition says he escaped the violence, but overwhelmed by grief, he refused to eat and slowly starved himself to death. Others believed he was hunted down and murdered while fleeing from his enemies. And then there was another story, perhaps the simplest one, that he escaped to the city of Metapontum and spent his final years in peace before dying naturally. No one knows which story is true, because the greatest irony of all is that Pythagoras himself left behind no writings, nothing, no books, no letters, no
personal records. Even many discoveries attributed to him may have come from his followers. And yet, his enemies destroyed his schools. His brotherhood collapsed. His power disappeared. Empires rose and fell. Kingdoms vanished. Civilizations turned into ruins. But somehow, one idea survived. 2,500 years later, millions of students around the world still learn the same theorem, still draw the same triangle, still speak the name Pythagoras. Empires vanished. Kingdoms disappeared. His own brotherhood was destroyed. But the triangle outlived them all. The fall of
Power had begun with a mystery, and after 25 centuries, it ended with one.